Chapter 1. The Glue Catastrophe. Sloan Richards stared at the glossy box on her kitchen table like it was a ticking bomb. The picture on the front, a sleek, cherry-red sports car, mocked her with its promise of precision and elegance. Inside, she knew, lurked 100 tiny plastic pieces and a tube of glue that could ruin her manicure and her dignity in one go. Across the table, Evan sat cross-legged on the chair, his elbows planted firmly on the surface, chin resting on his hands. His expression was a mix of curiosity and skepticism, the same look he gave broccoli and math homework. "So," he said, dragging out the word like he was about to deliver a verdict. "You really want to do this?" Sloan forced a smile, the kind that said, "I'm totally confident and not panicking at all." "Of course. It'll be fun. You and me building a car. Like a team." Evan raised an eyebrow. "You've never built one before." "Neither have you," she shot back, trying to sound playful instead of defensive. "Yeah, but I'm 9. I'm supposed to not know stuff." He grinned, and Sloan felt her heart squeeze. He was growing up so fast, too fast. His jokes were sharper now, his interests shifting from cartoons to video games and soccer stats. She missed the days when a trip to the park was enough to make him light up. That was why they were here. Sloan had decided, after a particularly quiet Saturday where Evan spent 3 hours building virtual cities while she scrolled through social media, that she wasn't going to lose him to screens and adolescence. She was going to dive headfirst into his world, even if it meant glue fumes and tiny car doors. "Okay," she said, clapping her hands. "Let's do this." The first 10 minutes were promising. They unpacked the pieces, sorted them into neat piles, and read the instructions. Sloan even managed to snap 2 parts together without breaking anything. Confidence bloomed briefly, then came the glue. "Mom," Evan said, watching her wrestle with the stubborn cap. "You're supposed to twist it, not squeeze it like a ketchup bottle." "I am twisting," Sloan grunted, twisting so hard her knuckles turned white. The cap finally gave way with a pop, followed by a thin stream of glue that shot out like a rogue missile, landing squarely on the table. That's not where it goes," Evan said, deadpan. Sloan grabbed a paper towel, laughing nervously. "It's fine. Just a little spill." 5 minutes later, there was glue on the table, glue on Sloan's fingers, glue on Evan's fingers, and, mysteriously, glue on the dog's tail. The car pieces, however, remained stubbornly unattached. "Okay," Sloan said, holding 2 parts together while blowing on them like they were birthday candles. "Just stick already." "Mom," Evan said, his voice rich with amusement. "You're supposed to let it dry for like a minute." "A minute? Who has that kind of time?" Sloan shot him a grin, and for the first time in weeks, she saw his eyes sparkle with genuine laughter. They kept going, their progress slow but hilarious. Sloan glued a wheel on backward. Evan accidentally stuck a door to the hood. At one point, Sloan's fingers bonded so firmly to a piece that Evan had to pry them off with a butter knife. By the time they finished, if finished meant a car that looked like it had survived a demolition derby, they were both laughing so hard Sloan had tears in her eyes. "Okay," she said, surveying their masterpiece. "It's unique. It's a disaster," Evan corrected, grinning. "But it's our disaster." Sloan felt warmth flood her chest. For a moment, the fear that had been gnawing at her, the fear of losing him, melted away. They were still a team. Maybe not a perfect one, but a team nonetheless. "Next weekend," she said, ruffling his hair, "we're trying something new." Evan's eyes lit up. "Like what?" Sloan smiled, already plotting. "You'll see." Chapter 2. Mini-golf mayhem. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of optimism that only Sloan Richards could muster after a week of juggling work, school runs, and a glue catastrophe that still haunted her kitchen table. She had scrubbed the surface twice, but faint streaks of adhesive shimmered like battle scars under the light. Proof of effort, she told herself. Proof of love. Today's adventure was mini-golf. Sloan had picked it because it sounded simple. No glue, no sharp tools, no risk of bonding her fingers to a car hood. Just colorful balls, whimsical obstacles, and a chance to laugh with Evan without worrying about drying times. She parked her aging SUV in front of Putt Palace, a neon-splashed wonderland that looked like a carnival had exploded and decided to stay. Windmills spun lazily in the breeze, plastic dinosaurs loomed over faux grass, and a giant gorilla statue guarded the entrance like a bouncer with a bad attitude. Evan hopped out of the car, his sneakers hitting the pavement with a thud. His eyes widened as he took in the scene. "Whoa, this is epic." Sloan grinned, relieved. "See? Told you it'd be fun." He shot her a look that said jury's still out, but his grin betrayed him. Sloan felt a flicker of triumph. Score 1 for Mom. Inside, the air smelled faintly of popcorn and sunscreen, even though it was January. Sloan paid for 2 rounds and collected their putters. Hers a cheerful pink, Evan's a neon green that practically glowed in the dim light. "Okay," she said, scanning the course. "Rules are simple. Lowest score wins." Evan smirked. "You're going down." "Confidence is cute," Sloan said, "but don't underestimate me. I've got hidden skills." She did not, in fact, have hidden skills. Her first swing sent the ball ricocheting off a plastic flamingo, bouncing onto the next hole, and finally rolling to a stop near a trash can. Evan laughed so hard he nearly dropped his putter. "Mom, that's not even the right hole." "It's called strategy," Sloan said, retrieving the ball with as much dignity as she could muster. "Unconventional, but effective." Evan sank his first shot in 2 strokes, his grin smug. Sloan narrowed her eyes. Beginner's luck. They moved through the course, Sloan's confidence dwindling with every obstacle. She hit a windmill blade so hard the ball shot backward, narrowly missing a toddler. She got stuck in a loop-the-loop for 3 agonizing tries. Evan, meanwhile, was thriving, his competitive streak in full bloom. By the 7th hole, Sloan was sweating and laughing in equal measure. Evan was 2 strokes away from victory, and Sloan was contemplating whether bribery counted as parenting. "Okay," she said, lining up her shot. "This is it. Redemption." She swung. The ball rolled smoothly toward the hole. Then, at the last second, veered left and plopped into a decorative pond with a splash that echoed like mockery. Evan doubled over, clutching his stomach. "Mom, you killed it. It's drowning." Sloan stared at the pond, then at her son, and burst out laughing. The sound was loud and unrestrained, the kind of laugh that made strangers glance over and smile. For a moment, she didn't care about scores or soggy golf balls. She cared about this. Evan's laughter, bright and unguarded, filling the air like music. "Guess I'm buying lunch," she said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Guess you are," Evan said, grinning. "And maybe a towel." They finished the course, Evan victorious, Sloan gloriously defeated, and headed to the snack bar. Sloan ordered nachos and lemonade, Evan opting for a hot dog that looked suspiciously like it had been under a heat lamp since last summer. As they waited, Sloan felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned and froze. It was him, the man from the parking lot. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a smile that could melt glaciers. He wore a navy hoodie and jeans, casual but effortlessly put together. Sloan's brain short-circuited for a second. "Hey," he said, his voice warm and easy. "You okay?" That splash back there sounded dramatic. Sloan blinked, then laughed nervously. "Oh, that? Just me. Proving I'm a hazard to recreational sports." His smile widened. "Looked like you were having fun." "Define fun," Sloan said, gesturing to her damp golf ball now sitting in a napkin like a wounded soldier. He chuckled, and Sloan felt something flutter in her chest, a feeling she hadn't entertained in years. Not since Evan's dad left. Not since she decided romance was a luxury she couldn't afford. "I'm Nate," he said, offering a hand. "Sloan," she replied, shaking it. His grip was firm, warm. She tried not to notice how her pulse jumped. "Your son's got a good swing," Nate said, nodding toward Evan, who was busy drowning his hot dog in ketchup. "Yeah," Sloan said, smiling. "He's competitive." "Good trait," Nate said. "I coach a kids' soccer team nearby, always looking for players." Sloan's stomach did a weird flip. Soccer. Evan loved soccer. She filed that away, unsure why it felt significant. "Well," Nate said, stepping back, "enjoy your nachos, and maybe keep the balls out of the water." "I'll try," Sloan said, grinning. He walked away, and Sloan watched him go, her mind buzzing. She wasn't looking for this, wasn't planning for it. But something about Nate lingered, like the echo of a song you can't shake. "Mom," Evan said, snapping her out of her thoughts. "You were smiling like, weird." Sloan blinked. "Weird? Like, smiley weird," Evan said, squinting at her. "Do you know that guy?" "No," Sloan said quickly, then softened. "Just met him." Evan shrugged, unconcerned, and returned to his hot dog. Sloan took a sip of lemonade, her thoughts swirling. She had come here to bond with her son, not to notice someone. But maybe, just maybe, life had other plans. Chapter 3. Bowling and banter. By the time Saturday rolled around again, Sloan Richards had convinced herself that last week's encounter with Nate was nothing more than a blip, a pleasant surprise. Sure, but not something to dwell on. She had a mission, bond with Evan. Everything else was background noise. Still, when she caught herself checking her hair in the rearview mirror before pulling into the bowling alley parking lot, she muttered, "Seriously, Sloan? Get a grip." Evan, oblivious, was in the back seat humming a tune from his favorite video game. He perked up as soon as he saw the neon sign flashing Strike City Bowling. "Whoa, this looks awesome." Sloan grinned. "Glad you approve." Inside, the place smelled like pizza grease and nostalgia. Rows of lanes stretched under flickering lights, and the air buzzed with the sound of pins crashing and kids squealing. Sloan rented shoes, hers 2 sizes too big, Evan's 2 sizes too small, and they claimed a lane near the snack bar. "Okay," Sloan said, scanning the scoreboard screen. "You ready to lose?" Evan smirked. "You mean win?" Sloan wagged a finger. "Confidence is cute, but remember last week? I'm unpredictable." "Unpredictable isn't the same as good," Evan said, grinning. Sloan laughed and grabbed a ball, a bright orange one that looked heavier than her dignity could handle. She lined up her shot, swung, and released. The ball rolled down the lane like it was on a sightseeing tour, wobbling left, then right, before gently kissing the gutter. Evan clapped slowly. Wow, that was impressive. Don't patronize me, Sloan said, laughing. I'm warming up. Evan's first shot was a strike. Of course it was. He turned to her with a grin so smug Sloan considered faking an injury just to save face. Beginner's luck, she said, retrieving her ball. Sure, Evan said, already lining up his next shot. They played on, Sloan's score climbing at a pace that could generously be described as leisurely. Evan was thriving, his competitive streak in full bloom. Sloan didn't mind. Every laugh, every playful jab, every high five felt like a tiny victory in her mission to stay connected. Halfway through the game, Sloan's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her dad. Hey, Dad, she said, tucking the phone between her shoulder and ear as she grabbed a slice of pizza. Kiddo. Her father's voice boomed, warm and proud. Heard you've been taking Evan on adventures. Sloan smiled. Yeah, mini golf last week, bowling today. We're having fun. That's great, he said. You're doing right by him. Keep it up. His words settled over her like a soft blanket. Sloan had always worried she wasn't enough, wasn't doing enough. Hearing her dad's approval felt like a stamp of validation. Thanks, Dad, she said, her throat tightening just a little. Means a lot. They chatted briefly before Sloan hung up and turned back to Evan, who was now doing a victory dance after another strike. Show off, she teased, tossing her ball down the lane. It hit 2 pins. Progress. As she bent to grab another slice, a voice behind her said, You're improving. Sloan froze, then turned slowly. Nate stood there, holding a tray of nachos like a peace offering. He wore a gray t-shirt and jeans, casual and effortless, and Sloan's brain promptly forgot how words worked. Nate, she said, her voice a little too bright. Hi. Hey, he said, smiling. Didn't expect to see you here. Same, Sloan said, gesturing vaguely at the lanes. We're bowling. Looks like fun, Nate said, glancing at Evan, who was now watching with open curiosity. Mind if I join for a bit? My lane's full of teenagers who think bowling is a TikTok challenge. Sloan hesitated for half a second, then nodded. Sure, why not? Nate set down his tray and grabbed a ball like he'd been born for this. His first shot, strike. Sloan groaned. Show off, she muttered. He grinned. Just lucky. Evan's eyes sparkled. You're good. Thanks, buddy, Nate said, ruffling Evan's hair. You play soccer? Evan's face lit up. Yeah, I'm on the school team. I coach a local kids league, Nate said casually. You should come by sometime. Sloan felt that weird flip in her stomach again. She wasn't sure if it was pride, panic, or something dangerously close to excitement. They played a few rounds together, laughter flowing as easily as the gutter balls Sloan kept throwing. Nate was funny, effortlessly so, and Sloan found herself smiling more than she had in months. Evan seemed to like him too, which was both comforting and terrifying. When the game ended, Nate checked his watch. I've got to run. But it was great seeing you again. Yeah, Sloan said, trying to sound casual. You too. He smiled, warm and lingering, before walking away. Sloan watched him go, her heart doing somersaults she hadn't authorized. Mom, Evan said, his voice sly. You were smiling again. Sloan blinked. Smiling? Like, weird smiling, Evan said, grinning. You like him? Sloan laughed, a little too quickly. I do not. Do too, Evan said, grabbing his shoes. It's okay. He's cool. Sloan stared at her son, speechless. She had come here to bond with Evan, not to entertain the idea of liking someone. But as they walked out into the crisp evening air, Sloan couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, life was nudging her towards something unexpected. Chapter 4. Rollerblading disaster. Sloan Richards had never been one to back down from a challenge. At least, not when her 9-year-old son was watching. Which explained why she was currently standing in the middle of skate and glide, a rollerblading rink that smelled faintly of rubber and humiliation, staring at a pair of boots with wheels like they were medieval torture devices. This, she muttered under her breath, was a terrible idea. Evan, of course, was already halfway laced up, his grin wide and merciless. Come on, Mom. It's easy. Easy for people with functioning balance, Sloan said, eyeing the slick floor that gleamed like an ice rink designed by sadists. I haven't done this since ever. Evan laughed, the sound bright and teasing. You'll be fine. Just don't fall. Great advice, Sloan said dryly, tugging at the stubborn laces. Her fingers fumbled, and she wondered if the boots were mocking her. They felt heavy, unnatural, like strapping bricks to her feet and hoping for grace. Finally, she stood, wobbling like a newborn giraffe. Evan zipped past her, smooth and confident, his arms outstretched like wings. Sloan took one tentative step and immediately grabbed the railing like it was a lifeline. Mom, Evan called, circling back with effortless ease. You're supposed to move, not cling. I am moving, Sloan said through gritted teeth, inching forward like a snail on stilts. This is progress. She managed 3 shaky steps before her left foot betrayed her, sliding sideways. Sloan flailed, windmilling her arms in a desperate bid for dignity. She didn't fall. yet, but the railing groaned under her grip. Okay, she muttered. Maybe this was ambitious. Want me to help? Evan asked, grinning. No, Sloan said, straightening her spine. I've got this. She did not, in fact, have this. Her next attempt ended in a slow-motion collapse that left her sitting on the floor, legs splayed, dignity shattered. Evan skated over, laughing so hard he nearly toppled. Mom, you look like a starfish. Thank you for that visual, Sloan said, trying to stand. The boots felt glued to the floor, and she was contemplating crawling when a voice said, Need a hand. Sloan looked up, and her stomach did that now familiar flip. Nate stood there, holding out a hand, his smile warm and amused. He wore black skates and a navy hoodie, looking infuriatingly comfortable on wheels. Oh, Sloan said, blinking. Hi. Hi, Nate said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. You okay down there? Define okay, Sloan said, taking his hand. His grip was firm, steady, and he pulled her up with ease, like she weighed nothing. Sloan wobbled, clutching his arm like a lifeline. First time? He asked, steadying her. Is it that obvious? Sloan said, her cheeks heating. Just a little, Nate said, grinning. You're brave, though. Most people don't start with rollerblading. Brave or stupid? Sloan muttered, earning a laugh from him that made her stomach flutter. Here, Nate said, positioning himself beside her. Bend your knees a little. Keep your weight forward. And don't look at your feet. Look ahead. Sloan tried, her movements jerky and awkward. Nate stayed close, his hand hovering near her elbow, ready to catch her if gravity staged another coup. Evan zipped past, calling, Mom's got a coach now. Sloan shot him a look. Don't start. Nate chuckled. He's not wrong. They moved slowly, Sloan clinging to the railing less and trusting Nate more. His voice was calm, encouraging, and his presence steady. For the first time, Sloan felt a flicker of confidence, followed immediately by a wobble that sent her careening toward Nate. He caught her, his hands firm on her arms, and for a split second, they were close, too close. Sloan felt her breath hitch, her heart thudding like a drum. Nate's eyes met hers, warm and amused, and something electric hummed in the space between them. Got you, he said softly. Thanks, Sloan said, her voice a little shaky. She stepped back, trying to ignore the heat creeping up her neck. They skated together for a while, laughter mingling with the music blaring from overhead speakers. Sloan fell twice more, both times cushioned by Nate's quick reflexes, and by the end of the hour, she could move without clinging to the railing like a shipwrecked survivor. When they finally sat down to unlace their skates, Sloan felt flushed and exhilarated, not just from the exercise but from something else, something she hadn't felt in years. You did great, Nate said, smiling as he tugged off his boots. Define great, Sloan said, grinning. I fell 3 times. 4, Evan corrected, munching on a pretzel. Thanks for the support, Sloan said dryly. Nate laughed. Falling's part of learning. You kept getting up, that's what matters. Sloan met his gaze, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. She wanted to say something, something witty, something brave, but her tongue tangled with hesitation. Well, Nate said, standing, I should get going. But if you ever want tips or company for your next adventure, Sloan's heart thudded. I'll keep that in mind. He smiled, lingering for a beat before walking away. Sloan watched him go, her thoughts swirling like the rink lights. She hadn't planned for this, hadn't expected it. But as Evan tugged her sleeve, chattering about their next outing, Sloan couldn't shake the feeling that life was nudging her toward something new, something terrifying, something thrilling. Chapter 5. The Unexpected Invite. By Monday morning, Sloan Richards had almost convinced herself that the rollerblading fiasco, and the way Nate's hands had steadied her like she was something precious, was just a fleeting moment, a fun accident, nothing more, almost, because every time she replayed the scene in her head, her stomach did that ridiculous flip, and she found herself smiling like a teenager with a crush, which was absurd. She was 33, a single mom, and her life was a carefully balanced juggling act. Romance wasn't on the schedule, but life apparently didn't care about her schedule. It was Saturday again, and Sloan had planned another adventure for Evan, a trip to the local arcade. She figured it was safe, indoors, no wheels, no glue, no risk of public humiliation. Just flashing lights, video games, and enough noise to drown out any awkward thoughts. The arcade was a sensory overload of neon and nostalgia. Evan darted toward the racing games, his excitement palpable. Sloan followed, smiling as he slid into the driver's seat like he owned the place. Mom, watch this, he called, gripping the steering wheel with dramatic flair. Sloan laughed, leaning against the machine. For a moment, everything felt simple, just her and Evan, sharing a slice of joy. Then a voice behind her said, You again. Sloan turned, and there he was, Nate, casual in a navy jacket and jeans, his smile warm enough to melt the January chill. Oh, Sloan said, blinking. Hi. Hi, Nate said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Starting to think we're on the same adventure circuit. Sloan laughed, a little breathless. Guess so. He glanced at Evan, who was now shouting at the screen like his life depended on pixelated speed. He's good, Nate said. Future race car driver? Or future noise complaint? Sloan said, grinning. Nate chuckled, then hesitated, just a beat, before saying, listen, there's a community event next weekend. Family-friendly. Games, food, music. I help organize it for the kids' soccer league. You should come. Sloan blinked. Oh, that's nice. It's fun, Nate said, his tone easy but his gaze steady. No pressure. Just thought you and Evan might enjoy it. Sloan's brain scrambled for a response. She wasn't opposed to the idea. Evan would love it. But the thought of stepping into Nate's world, of opening that door even a crack, made her pulse race. I'll think about it, she said, aiming for casual and landing somewhere near awkward. Fair enough, Nate said, smiling. I'll text you the details. Sloan froze. Text, he grinned. You gave me your number at the rink, remember? Sloan blinked again. Had she? Oh God. She had. In the chaos of unlacing skates and pretending her heart wasn't doing gymnastics, she'd scribbled her number on a napkin. She told herself it was practical, just in case Evan wanted soccer info. Not this, right? She said, her cheeks heating. Okay. Nate's smile lingered, warm and unhurried, before he said, enjoy the arcade, and walked away. Sloan watched him go, her thoughts swirling like the flashing lights overhead. She wasn't sure what unnerved her more, the fact that he'd invited her, or the fact that a part of her wanted to say yes. Mom! Evan called, snapping her out of her reverie. I won. Sloan turned, smiling. Of course you did. They spent the next hour battling in air hockey, shooting hoops, and collecting enough tickets to win a plastic dinosaur that Evan declared epic. Sloan laughed, genuinely happy, but underneath, a quiet hum of anticipation thrummed. Next weekend, the event. Nate. After Evan was tucked in, Sloan curled up on the couch with a cup of tea, staring at her phone like it held the secrets of the universe. No text yet, which was good, which was disappointing, but she told herself she wasn't going to overthink this. It was just an event, for Evan, for fun. Not a date, definitely not a date. Her phone buzzed. Nate. Hey, Sloan. Here are the details for the community picnic next Saturday. Hope you and Evan can make it. Sloan stared at the message, her heart thudding. Simple, friendly, no pressure. She typed back before she could second-guess herself. Sloan, thanks. We'll try to be there. She hit send, then exhaled like she just defused a bomb. This was fine. Totally fine. Sloan found herself thinking about the picnic more than she cared to admit. She told herself it was for Evan. He'd love the games, the food, the chance to meet other kids. But deep down, she knew there was another reason. A reason with warm eyes and an easy smile. And that terrified her. Because opening that door meant risking more than her heart. It meant risking Evan's world, their balance, their little bubble of two. Sloan wasn't sure she was ready for that. But as Saturday crept closer, one truth became harder to ignore. Maybe, just maybe, she wanted to be. Chapter 6. The community picnic. Saturday dawned bright and breezy. The kind of day that seemed tailor-made for optimism. Sloan Richards, however, was a bundle of nerves disguised as a woman in jeans and a casual blouse. She told herself this was for Evan, just a fun outing, nothing more. But the truth hummed beneath her skin like a secret. Nate would be there. Evan bounded down the stairs, his soccer ball tucked under one arm. Mom, ready? Almost, Sloan said, grabbing the picnic blanket she'd dusted off for the occasion. She'd packed sandwiches, fruit, and enough snacks to feed a small army. Overprepared? Maybe. But it gave her something to do besides spiral about what this day might mean. The park was alive with color and sound when they arrived. Balloons bobbed in the breeze, tables groaned under the weight of potluck dishes, and laughter mingled with the distant thump of a soccer ball. Kids darted across the grass, their energy contagious. Sloan felt a pang of nostalgia. She remembered being 9, when the world was this big and bright. Whoa! Evan breathed, his eyes wide. This is awesome. Sloan smiled, relieved. Glad you think so. They spread their blanket under a shady oak, and Evan was off like a shot, joining a group of kids kicking a ball around. Sloan watched him go, her heart swelling. This was why she'd said yes. For him. For moments like this. Glad you made it. Sloan turned, and there he was. Nate. Casual in a navy polo and khaki shorts. His smile easy. His presence somehow grounding and electrifying all at once. Hi, Sloan said, her voice a little too bright. Looks like a great turnout. Best one yet, Nate said, glancing toward the field. Evan's already fitting right in. Sloan followed his gaze. Evan was laughing, his cheeks flushed, his movements confident. Sloan felt a rush of pride and a flicker of fear. He was growing up so fast. Would she always be able to keep up? You did a good thing bringing him, Nate said, his tone warm. Kids need this. Sloan smiled, her throat tightening. Yeah, I guess we both needed it. Nate's eyes softened, and for a moment, the noise of the picnic faded. Sloan felt the weight of his gaze, not heavy, but steady, like sunlight on skin. She looked away, flustered, pretending to fuss with the blanket. Want something to drink? Nate asked, gesturing toward the refreshment table. Sure, Sloan said, grateful for the distraction. They walked together, weaving through clusters of families. Sloan was hyper-aware of everything. The brush of Nate's arm near hers, the sound of his laugh when someone cracked a joke, the way people greeted him like he belonged. He did belong. And Sloan wasn't sure where she fit in this picture. At the table, Nate handed her a lemonade. Their fingers brushed, and Sloan's pulse jumped. She told herself it was nothing, just static, just coincidence, but her body wasn't buying it. So, Nate said, leaning casually against the table, how's the adventure streak going? Sloan laughed. Messy. Mini-golf was a disaster. Bowling was humbling, and rollerblading. Well, you saw that. You were brave, Nate said, his smile teasing but kind. Most people would have quit after the first fall. Most people have sense, Sloan said, grinning. I have stubbornness. Stubbornness is good, Nate said. Gets you through the hard stuff. His tone shifted, soft, sincere, and Sloan felt something stir deep inside. She wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to peel back the layers of that statement, but Evan's voice cut through the moment. Mom, watch this. Sloan turned to see Evan dribbling the soccer ball with surprising skill. He shot it toward the goal, a pair of cones, and scored. His grin was pure sunshine. Nice, Nate called, cupping his hands around his mouth. Evan beamed, and Sloan's heart squeezed. He liked Nate, really liked him, and that scared her more than anything, because if this, whatever this was, didn't work out, it wouldn't just be her heart on the line. It would be Evan's too. The picnic rolled on, a blur of laughter and games. Sloan found herself talking to Nate more than she'd planned. About Evan, about the league, about life. He was easy to talk to, his words threaded with humor and warmth. And every time their eyes met, something unspoken flickered between them. When the sun dipped low and families began packing up, Nate walked with Sloan back to her car. Evan trailed behind, clutching his soccer ball like a trophy. Thanks for coming, Nate said, his voice low, meant just for her. I'm glad you did. Me too, Sloan said, and she meant it, more than she wanted to admit. Nate hesitated, then said, maybe we could grab coffee sometime. Just you and me. Sloan's breath caught. Coffee. Simple. Innocent. Terrifying. She faltered, her mind a whirl of reasons to say no. Evan, her schedule, the fragile balance of their lives. But then she saw Evan ahead, laughing, carefree, and she thought, maybe it's okay to want something for myself too. I'll think about it, she said softly. Nate smiled, warm and patient. Fair enough. He walked away, and Sloan stood there, her heart thudding like a drum. Coffee. Just coffee. So why did it feel like the start of something that could change everything? Chapter 7. The awkward coffee date. Sloan Richards had spent the better part of the week convincing herself that saying yes to Nate's coffee invitation was a terrible idea. She had a list, an actual list, of reasons why it wouldn't work. Evan, her schedule, the risk of complicating their lives. But every time her phone buzzed with a message from Nate, short, friendly, never pushy, her resolve softened like butter on a summer sidewalk. By Friday night, the list was in the trash. Saturday morning found Sloan standing in front of her closet, staring at her clothes like they were auditioning for a role in a romantic comedy. She wanted casual but not careless, cute but not trying too hard. After 15 minutes of internal debate, she settled on a soft blue sweater and dark jeans. Safe, flattering, and unlikely to scream. I googled first date outfits at midnight. Evan was at a friend's house for a playdate, which gave Sloan a rare window of freedom and a pang of guilt. Was she being selfish? Should she be spending this time with him instead? She shoved the thought aside. It was just coffee, not a wedding, not a life-altering decision. Just coffee. The cafe Nate had suggested was cozy and charming, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, with the hum of quiet conversation and the scent of roasted beans thick in the air. Sloan arrived 5 minutes early, because punctuality was her armor against nerves. She picked a corner table, fiddled with the sugar packets, and tried not to look like someone waiting for a date. Hey! She looked up and there he was, Nate, casual in a gray sweater and jeans, his smile warm enough to melt the January chill. Sloan's stomach did that ridiculous flip again. Hi, she said, standing a little too quickly. Her knee bumped the table, rattling the sugar packets like dice. Smooth, Sloan. Real smooth. Nate grinned, clearly amused. You okay? Totally, Sloan said, forcing a laugh. Just enthusiastic about coffee. He chuckled and slid into the seat across from her. Glad you came. Me too, Sloan said, and she meant it, though admitting that felt like stepping onto thin ice. They ordered, her a caramel latte, him a black coffee, and for a moment, the silence stretched, not awkward but charged. Sloan scrambled for something safe to say. So, she began, how's the soccer league? Nate smiled. Busy, but good. The kids keep me on my toes. I bet, Sloan said, relaxing a little. Evan would love it. He's obsessed with soccer. I noticed, Nate said, his tone warm. He's got talent. Sloan felt a rush of pride and a flicker of fear. Evan liked Nate, really liked him, and that made this, whatever this was, feel bigger than coffee. Their drinks arrived, and Sloan reached for her latte, just as her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Evan. Evan, Mom, where's my extra controller? We're playing Mario Kart and I need it now. Sloan sighed, typing back quickly. Sloan, check the drawer under the TV. She set the phone down only for it to buzz again. Evan, not there. Did you hide it? Sloan groaned. Sorry, she said to Nate. Mom life. No problem, Nate said, smiling. Handle your crisis. 3 texts later, Evan found the controller, and Sloan finally set the phone aside. Sorry, she said again, cheeks warm. He's persistent. I like that, Nate said, his eyes crinkling. Shows he knows you'll come through. Sloan blinked, caught off guard by the sweetness of that observation. Yeah, she said softly. I try. They talked more about work, about hobbies, about the ridiculousness of rollerblading. Nate was easy to talk to. His humor threaded through every story, his sincerity shining in the quiet moments. Sloan found herself laughing, really laughing, the kind of laugh that loosened knots she didn't know she'd been carrying. And then, just as the conversation dipped into something deeper, her fears about Evan growing up, his thoughts on second chances, the universe decided to test her composure. A waiter carrying a tray of iced coffees tripped near their table, sending a tidal wave of cold liquid cascading across the floor and onto Sloane's boots. Oh my God! Sloan yelped, jumping back as the waiter stammered apologies. Nate was on his feet in an instant, grabbing napkins, his movements calm and efficient. Don't worry, he said, crouching to blot the mess. You're okay. Sloan laughed, because what else could she do? Of course this happens to me. Adds character, Nate said, grinning up at her. Memorable first coffee. Sloane's cheeks heated. Is that what this is? A first coffee? Nate's smile softened. I hope so. The words hung between them, warm and steady, and Sloan felt something shift, something quiet but undeniable. She wanted this, wanted him, and that terrified her. When the mess was cleaned and the laughter faded, Nate walked her to her car. The winter air was crisp, the sky streaked with pale gold. Sloane's heart thudded like a drum. Thanks for coming, Nate said, his voice low, meant just for her. I'd like to do it again. Sloan hesitated, just a beat, then said, Me too. Nate's smile was slow, genuine, and it lit something inside her she hadn't felt in years. As she drove home, Sloan told herself it was just coffee, just laughter, just a moment, but deep down she knew better. It was the start of something. Chapter 8. Evan's honest question. Sunday afternoon was quiet, the kind of calm Sloan Richards usually craved. The laundry hummed in the background, sunlight spilled across the living room rug, and Evan was sprawled on the couch, his soccer ball tucked under his arm like a loyal pet. Sloan sat opposite him, sipping tea and scrolling through her phone, trying very hard not to reread Nate's last text. Had a great time yesterday. Hope you did too. Simple, friendly. But every time Sloan saw it, her stomach did that ridiculous flip. She typed back, Me too, and then stared at the screen like it might reveal the future. Didn't. It just sat there, glowing with possibility and risk. Mom! Evan's voice cut through her thoughts. Sloan looked up, startled. Yeah. He was watching her with a look she couldn't quite read. Curious, maybe a little cautious. Are you gonna marry Nate? Sloan choked on her tea. What? Evan shrugged, casual as you please. You like him. He likes you. That's what happens, right? Sloan stared at her son, words scrambling like marbles in her head. Sweetheart, it's not that simple. Why not? Evan asked, his tone genuinely puzzled. You smiled at him. A lot. Sloan felt heat creep up her neck. Smiling doesn't mean marriage. Doesn't it? Evan tilted his head, his expression earnest. You haven't smiled like that in forever. The words landed like a pebble in a still pond, rippling through Sloan's chest. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Evan, I like Nate. He's nice. But liking someone doesn't mean we're getting married tomorrow. Tomorrow? Evan snorted. That'd be weird. Sloan laughed. Because what else could she do? Exactly. Evan sat up, hugging his soccer ball. I wouldn't mind if you did, though. Sloan blinked. You wouldn't. He shrugged again, his voice softer now. He's cool. And you seem happy. The simplicity of that statement undid her. Sloan felt something tighten in her throat, something raw and tender. She'd spent so long worrying about Evan, about keeping their little world safe, about making sure he never felt the cracks in her own heart, that she hadn't considered this. Maybe he wanted her happy too. She crossed the room and sat beside him, pulling him into a hug. He smelled like grass and sunshine and childhood, and Sloan held him close, blinking back tears. Thanks, buddy, she whispered. That means a lot. Evan hugged her back, then pulled away with a grin. So, you gonna text him? Sloan laughed, swiping at her eyes. You're relentless. Just saying, Evan said, smirking. Don't overthink it. Overthink it? Sloan had practically built a mansion out of overthinking. But as Evan turned back to his game, Sloan stared at her phone, her heart thudding. Maybe he was right. Maybe it didn't have to be complicated. Maybe it could just be good. After Evan was asleep, Sloan curled up on the couch, her phone glowing in her hand. She typed, deleted, typed again, then finally sent. Sloan. Had a great time too. Coffee again sometime? Her finger hovered over the screen, her pulse racing. Then the message whooshed away, and Sloan exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. 2 minutes later, her phone buzzed. Nate, I'd love that. How about next weekend? Sloan stared at the words, a smile tugging at her lips. Next weekend. Another coffee. Another chance. She set the phone down, her heart light and heavy all at once. This was new. This was scary. But as she glanced toward Evan's room, she thought, maybe it was okay to be scared. Maybe it was okay to want more. Chapter 9. The Big Misunderstanding. By the time Saturday rolled around, Sloan Richards felt cautiously optimistic. She and Nate had texted all week. Short, easy exchanges that made her smile like an idiot every time her phone buzzed. Nothing heavy, nothing complicated. Just nice. And after years of keeping her heart under lock and key, nice felt revolutionary. Their plan was simple. Coffee at the same cozy cafe. Sloan had even managed to pick an outfit without spiraling into a full-blown identity crisis. She was ready. Or as ready as someone who hadn't dated in nearly a decade could be. But life, as usual, had other plans. Sloan arrived 5 minutes early, because punctuality was her coping mechanism. She snagged the same corner table, ordered her caramel latte, and tried not to look like someone rehearsing casual conversation in her head. Nate walked in a few minutes later, his smile warm, his presence steady. Sloan's stomach did that ridiculous flip again. She stood, waved, and, because the universe enjoys irony, knocked her napkin holder to the floor. Smooth, Nate teased, picking it up for her. Just keeping things interesting, Sloan said, grinning. They settled in, and for the first 20 minutes, everything was perfect. Easy laughter, shared stories, the kind of conversation that flowed like water. Sloan felt herself relax, felt the knot of worry in her chest loosen. Maybe this could work. Maybe. Then she heard it. From the table behind them, a woman's voice, bright, familiar, floated into the air. So, Nate, are we still on for dinner tonight? Sloan froze. Her brain scrambled to process the words, her pulse thudding like a drum. Dinner. Tonight. With her? With someone else? Nate glanced over his shoulder, smiling politely. Hey, Jenna. Yeah, I'll see you later. Later. Dinner. Sloan's stomach dropped like a stone in water. She forced a smile, her latte suddenly tasting like cardboard. Busy day? She said lightly, hoping her voice didn't crack. Yeah, Nate said, oblivious to the storm brewing in her head. League stuff. Jenna helps with scheduling. Scheduling. Right? Totally innocent. Except Sloan's brain wasn't buying it. Because Jenna was gorgeous. Sleek hair, perfect nails, the kind of woman who probably never glued her fingers together trying to build a model car. Sloan nodded, her smile brittle. Sounds great. The conversation limped along after that, but Sloan's heart wasn't in it. Every laugh felt forced, every word heavy. By the time they said goodbye, Sloan was drowning in doubt. Back home, Sloan paced the kitchen like a woman possessed. Evan was at the table, building a Lego fortress with the intensity of an architect on a deadline. You okay? He asked, glancing up. Fine, Sloan said too quickly. Totally fine. Evan squinted. You look not fine. Sloan sighed, sinking into a chair. It's nothing. Just grown-up stuff. Evan shrugged, returning to his Legos. If it's about Nate, you should just talk to him. Sloan blinked. What makes you think it's about Nate? You only make that face when it's about him, Evan said, matter of fact. The weird, smiley but worried face. Sloan groaned, burying her face in her hands. You're too observant. Just saying, Evan said, snapping a Lego piece into place. If you like him, don't be weird. Don't be weird. Easier said than done when your heart feels like a fragile glass ornament dangling over concrete. By evening, Sloan had worked herself into a full-blown spiral. She stared at her phone, debating whether to text Nate, to ask, to clarify. But every draft sounded needy or jealous or both. So she did nothing except stew. Then her phone buzzed. Nate, had a great time today. Hope you did too. Sloan stared at the message, her emotions tangling like headphone wires. He sounded normal, friendly, like nothing was wrong, like he wasn't having dinner with Jenna in 2 hours. She typed back, Sloan. Yeah, me too. Short, safe, hollow. Unbeknownst to Sloan, Evan had decided to take matters into his own hands. Because in his 9-year-old brain, grown-ups were hopeless at fixing things, and he was a problem solver. So while Sloan was in the shower, Evan grabbed her phone, scrolled to Nate's contact, and typed, Evan. Hi Nate, it's Evan. Mom's being weird. You should fix it. He hit send, grinning like a mastermind, and returned to his Legos. 10 minutes later, Sloan emerged from the bathroom to find her phone buzzing like an angry bee. She picked it up and froze. Nate. Hey Evan. Thanks for the heads up. Tell your mom I'd like to explain. Can I call? Sloan's jaw dropped. Evan. Evan looked up, innocent as a choir boy. What? Did you text Nate? Maybe, Evan said, grinning. You're welcome. Sloan groaned, flopping onto the couch. Her cheeks burned, her heart raced, and her phone buzzed again. Nate. Sloan? Can we talk? Sloan stared at the screen, her pulse thudding. She could ignore it, pretend this day never happened. Or she could answer and risk everything. She took a deep breath and typed, Sloan. Sure. Chapter 10. The Grand Gesture. Sloan Richards sat on the edge of her couch, phone in hand, heart pounding like a drumline in her chest. Nate's message glowed on the screen. Can we talk? 3 words. Simple. Terrifying. She typed back before she could overthink it. Sure. Seconds later, her phone rang. Sloan inhaled, bracing herself, and answered. Hello. Hey. Nate's voice came through warm and steady. First, Evan's a great kid. Persistent. Sloan groaned, pressing a hand to her forehead. I'm so sorry. He took initiative. Nate chuckled. No apology needed. Honestly, I'm glad he did. Sloan blinked. You are? Yeah, Nate said. Because I think something got lost today, and I don't want you walking away with the wrong idea. Sloan swallowed hard. About Jenna? Exactly, Nate said. She's a friend. Helps with league scheduling. That's it. Dinner tonight? It's a volunteer planning meeting. Not a date. Relief crashed over Sloan so fast it left her dizzy. Oh, Nate echoed, his tone teasing. You sound surprised. I might have jumped to conclusions, Sloan admitted, cheeks burning. Understandable, Nate said gently. But for the record, I'm not interested in Jenna. I'm interested in you. The words hung in the air, warm and steady, and Sloan felt her breath hitch. Nate, I know this is new, he said, his voice low, sincere. And I know you've got Evan to think about. But I like you, Sloan. I'd like to see where this goes. Slow, steady, whatever pace feels right. Sloan closed her eyes, her heart thudding. She'd spent so long guarding herself, building walls, convincing herself she didn't need this. But the truth was undeniable. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted the laughter, the warmth, the possibility of something more. I'd like that too, she whispered. Nate's smile was audible in his voice. Good. Then let me make it up to you. Dinner tomorrow? Just us. No scheduling meetings, no misunderstandings. Sloan laughed, the sound bubbling up like champagne. Okay, Nate said, his tone bright with promise. I'll text you the details. When the call ended, Sloan sat there, stunned and smiling, her heart light and heavy all at once. This was real. This was happening. And for the first time in years, it felt right. Dinner was perfect, not because of the food, though the pasta was excellent, but because of the ease. Nate was funny and kind, attentive without being overwhelming. They talked about everything: Evan, work, favorite movies, embarrassing childhood stories. Sloan laughed until her cheeks hurt, and when Nate walked her to her car, the night air crisp and quiet, she felt something shift. He paused, his hands in his pockets, his smile soft. I'd like to do this again. Me too, Sloan said, her voice steady now, her fear melting into something sweeter. Nate stepped closer, slow and careful, giving her space to decide. Sloan didn't move away. When his lips brushed hers, gentle, tentative, it felt like a door opening, like sunlight spilling into a room that had been dark for too long. When they pulled back, Sloan was smiling. Really smiling. The kind Evan had noticed. The kind she thought she'd lost. Back home, Sloan peeked into Evan's room. He was asleep, his soccer ball tucked beside him like a loyal friend. Sloan's heart swelled. She'd worried so much about losing him, about drifting apart. But maybe these adventures, these changes were teaching both of them something. That love could grow, not shrink. That family could expand, not break. She whispered into the quiet, "We're gonna be okay." And for the first time in a long time, she believed it. Chapter 11. A new adventure. The following Saturday dawned bright and clear. The kind of day that practically begged for something memorable. Sloan Richards stood in the kitchen, packing snacks into a tote bag, her heart humming with a mix of excitement and nerves. Today wasn't just another weekend adventure. It was their first one with Nate. Evan bounded in, sneakers half-tied, his grin wide. "Mom, is Nate coming?" Sloan smiled, trying to sound casual even as her pulse jumped. "Yep, he'll meet us at the park." "Cool," Evan said, grabbing his soccer ball. "I'm gonna show him my new trick." Sloan laughed. "I'm sure he'll be impressed." Truth was, she was impressed by Evan's enthusiasm, by how easily he'd accepted Nate into their orbit. It made Sloan hopeful, and a little terrified, because this wasn't just about her anymore. It never was. The park was alive with weekend energy. Kids shrieking on the playground, dogs chasing frisbees, the scent of grilled hot dogs drifting on the breeze. Sloan spread the blanket under a shady tree, her tote bag brimming with snacks and juice boxes. Evan was already kicking his ball around, his laughter ringing like music. "Hey!" Sloan turned, and there he was, Nate, casual in a navy t-shirt and jeans, his smile warm enough to melt every lingering doubt. He carried a small cooler and a folding chair because of course he did. Thoughtful, prepared, easy. "Hi," Sloan said, her voice softer than she intended. "Hope I'm not late," Nate said, setting down the cooler. "Perfect timing," Sloan said, and she meant it. Evan zipped over, his soccer ball tucked under his arm. "Nate, watch this." Nate grinned. "Show me what you've got." Evan launched into a series of moves, dribbling, spinning, kicking the ball into an imaginary goal. Nate clapped, genuinely impressed. "Nice. You've got skills." Evan beamed, and Sloan felt her heart squeeze. This was what she wanted. Joy, connection, a sense of belonging that stretched beyond the two of them. It started with Nate and Evan kicking the ball back and forth, laughter spilling across the grass. Then Evan called out, "Mom, join us." Sloan groaned. "Me? You've seen me on wheels. Do you really want me near a ball?" "Yes," Evan said, grinning. "Come on." Sloan shot Nate a look. "You're enjoying this?" "Absolutely," Nate said, his eyes twinkling. "Come on, Sloan. Live dangerously." She laughed, kicking off her sandals and stepping onto the grass. The first few minutes were chaos, Sloan tripping over her own feet, Evan darting like a pro, Nate laughing so hard he nearly missed a pass. Sloan laughed too, the sound bubbling up like champagne, light and unrestrained. For a moment, everything else faded. The worries, the what-ifs, the fear of change. It was just them, playing under a sky so blue it hurt, their laughter weaving into something bright and whole. After the game, they collapsed on the blanket, sweaty and breathless. Nate opened the cooler, revealing sandwiches and fruit. Sloan blinked. "You brought food." "Thought I'd contribute," Nate said, grinning. "Didn't want to mooch off your snacks." Sloan smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. They ate, talked, teased. Evan chattered about school and soccer. Nate listened like every word mattered, and Sloan watched them with a heart so full it felt fragile. At one point, Evan leaned against Sloan, his voice soft. "This was the best day." Sloan kissed the top of his head. "I think so too." Nate met her gaze then, something steady and sure in his eyes. Sloan felt the world tilt, not in a dizzying way, but in a way that felt like coming home. Back at the house, Evan crashed on the couch, exhausted and happy. Sloan tucked a blanket around him, her chest tight with gratitude. She'd worried so much about losing him, about the gap growing between them. But today proved something. Love could stretch, could make room for new people, new joy without breaking what mattered most. Her phone buzzed. A message from Nate. "Nate, today was amazing. Thank you for letting me be part of it." Sloan smiled, her fingers hovering over the screen before typing back. "Sloan, it was amazing because you were there." She hit send, her heart light and steady. For the first time in years, Sloan wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for more adventures, more laughter, more love. And as she glanced at Evan, dreaming under his blanket, Sloan whispered into the quiet, "We're gonna be okay." Epilogue, forward momentum. Spring arrived quietly, like a secret whispered into Sloan Richards' life. The trees in the park wore fresh green crowns. The air smelled faintly of blossoms, and the world felt softer somehow, lighter, as if it had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. Sloan stood at the edge of the soccer field, her hands tucked into the pockets of her jacket, watching Evan dart across the grass with his teammates. His laughter carried on the breeze, bright and unguarded, and Sloan felt that familiar swell of pride, the kind that made her chest ache in the best way. Beside her, Nate adjusted the cones for practice, his movements easy, his smile flashing when Evan scored a goal. Sloan's heart did that ridiculous flip again. But this time, she didn't fight it. She let it happen. Because somewhere between glue disasters and rollerblading fiascos, between coffee dates and quiet talks under starlight, Sloan had learned something vital. Love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, messy, uncertain, hopeful, and choosing to try anyway. Life hadn't transformed overnight. There were still mornings when Sloan overslept, still evenings when Evan forgot his homework, still moments when doubt crept in like an uninvited guest. But now, there was laughter threaded through the chaos. There were adventures, mini-golf rematches, bowling nights, even a second attempt at rollerblading, with fewer bruises and more confidence. And there was Nate, steady and patient, never rushing, never pushing, just being there. Evan adored him, not in a way that made Sloan feel replaced, but in a way that made her heart expand. Watching them together, laughing, teasing, sharing inside jokes, Sloan realized something she'd feared for so long. Letting someone in didn't mean losing what mattered. It meant gaining more. One evening, after practice, Evan climbed into the back seat, his cheeks flushed from the game. "Mom," he said, his tone casual but his eyes bright. "You're happy." Sloan blinked, startled. "I am." "Yeah," Evan said, grinning. "Like, really happy." I like it. Sloan felt her throat tighten. She reached back, squeezing his hand. Me too, buddy. And in that moment, Sloan understood. This wasn't just her story. It was theirs. A story about growing, about stretching, about finding joy in unexpected places, about learning that love, whether for a child, a partner, or yourself, wasn't a finite thing. It was infinite if you let it be. Weeks later, Sloan sat on her porch with Nate, the evening air warm and sweet. Evan was inside, building yet another Lego masterpiece, humming under his breath. Sloan sipped her tea, her gaze drifting to the horizon where the sky blushed pink. Remember the first time we met? Nate asked, his voice low, teasing. Mini-golf. You nearly drowned a golf ball. Sloan laughed, the sound bubbling up like champagne. And you still asked me out. Questionable judgment. Best decision I ever made, Nate said, his smile soft, his eyes steady. Sloan felt her heart swell, not with the dizzy rush of infatuation, but with something deeper, something rooted and real. She reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining like threads in a tapestry. For the first time in years, Sloan wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for more adventures, more laughter, more love, ready to keep moving forward one imperfect, beautiful step at a time.